Hey Primatech peeps, and welcome back to the Primatech Files, a Southgate Media Group podcast dedicated to all things Heroes Prime and Heroes Reborn related. We're doing another Reborn Roundtable. After last week, talking to the guys from the Heroes RPG, we're bringing them back to, give their thoughts on Heroes Prime and Heroes Reborn. And once again, we've got them returning. We have Janie / No One Special.
Hi there.
We have Quillkeeper.
Hiya.
And we got Caboose.
Howdy.
Cool. So we are going to start off with in Heroes Prime territory. So let's start off with the first basic question. Was there a specific point that you became a fan of the show Heroes? Because I've told this story many a time on the podcast. My one was when Future Hero turned up in episode 4. I was like, yep, I'm invested. So yeah, let's start off with Janie.
I'd have to say I was hooked on the pilot, but I'm a big mystery buff, and so just the whole not knowing what was going on really, really intrigued me as we're trying to figure it all out and watch these people try to figure out what's going on with their bodies. But I would have to say I was hooked forever after they, opened Claire up on the morgue table. That was pretty awesome. Still my favorite moment.
Okay, Quill, can you give us when you became a fan of Heroes?
I actually became a fan of Heroes. It was in the break after Writer Strike of season 2 and before season 3 came out. Loads of people were raving about it, and they said, "Oh, it's right up your street. It's just the way your mind works." I picked it up on DVD. I binge watched the first couple of seasons of the play every week when it was out. I'd tell my wife, "Not now, busy."
Caboose, why did you become a fan of Heroes?
A lot like Janie there, I was at the time really into the show Lost, and I was very intrigued by mysteries. And when our friend Six pointed me at this new show that was airing, Heroes, I took a look at the pilot on the NBC website, and I was fascinated by the secretive HRG, Isaac's paintings of the future, the brothers who apparently only fly when they're together. It was something that got me immediately hooked. I was stuck. I could not get away.
We're going to move on to the next question, which was, do you have a particular favourite volume of Heroes? And we'll start off with Quill.
As awesome as Volume 1 was, I think Volume 3, as being the first one I watched in episodic fashion, will always hold a special place in my heart. And I think as well, the writer's strike made Volume 2, the ending of it was awkward. I can understand why, and I don't hold that against them, but I do think that Volume 3 and 4, they did a very good job of recovering from that. So I think they would still hold a special place in my heart, because it was the first ones I saw. That was when I was actually hooked.
Okay, Caboose.
Oh, Volume 1, all the way. It felt very much like a single, cohesive story with a definitive beginning and a satisfying ending. It was just this story that could have stood on its own and been just about perfect. Volume 1, all the way.
And Janie?
I have to agree with Caboose, but I think that's partially because of the whole mystery aspect of it. Being a mystery buff, I absolutely loved Volume 1.
There's no surprise. Nearly everyone I talk to has always said Volume 1. And yeah, but I really do appreciate Fugitives. I think that little arc was really great, and it had just what I kind of wanted from Heroes. And there wasn't like this big kind of, oh, we're out to save the world. It was like, oh, we're out to save ourselves this time. And that's what I really liked about it. I think it's the only one that wasn't like, let's save the world. So yeah.
It had a very realistic spin on it.
Yes, definitely. We'll move on to the next question, which is favourite character. We're just going with Heroes Prime at the moment. So who was your favourite character from Heroes Prime?
Favorite character? That would have been Mohinder Suresh. That is Volume 1, Mohinder Suresh. The Indian geneticist investigating his father's murder, taking up his research, struggling to understand a world that was more bizarre and dangerous every day. I may not have liked the direction he was taken later in Volume 3, but Mohinder would have been my favorite character, absolutely.
So you really like everyman kind of Mohinder before...
Absolutely. He offered a very different perspective. He didn't have any powers. He was looking outside in at this world. That was a very, very cool perspective.
And I really like what they did with him in kind of season 2 as well. They kind of gave him that kind of HRG kind of morally grey aspect to him, which I really liked as well.
Yeah. Possibly the best thing to come out of Generations, what they did to Mohinder.
Was it just me, or did anyone remember around about the time when it's first started and they said, well, Mohinder's just going to be the everyman the whole way through, he's never going to get powers? Was that just me?
Yeah, no, that definitely happened. I think that would have been somewhere mid-season 1. It was probably right after he survived having Siler torturing him. I think that after that it was just, he was always going to be the guy who was powerless in the situation, but who had a lot of the answers.
Janie, who is your favourite Heroes character?
Overall, I would have to say it was Hero. He was the most unchanging in who he was, and they didn't write him to be a totally different person who kind of flip-flopped or just had a complete change of character. He was very steady. And I liked that, and he had a bit of an innocence to him that I really appreciated. He was true to himself.
Yeah.
He didn't have any big crises, I guess, for who he was necessarily. I mean, his crisis with the waitress, whose name I'm Charlie. His crisis with Charlie kind of helped define him a little bit, but he never changed who he was. He was always looking to be the hero. He was always
even
wanting to
powers.
Yeah. He didn't want to abuse his powers. He just wanted to help people, and he was just always true to himself, and I liked that.
And Quill?
Yeah, I'd have to with Janie. Hero is probably my favourite character. I think HRG as well is a very close second, because again he was almost like an everyman. The morally great. It's a phrase that I like. He was doing the wrong thing for the right reason. In a lot of the earlier stuff, what he was doing was actually to protect his family. And whilst it might not have been necessarily strictly legal or the moral thing to do, sometimes his intentions were true.
So we're going to move on to Heroes Reborn. So let's start off with the beginning. Did you guys watch Heroes Reborn Dark Matters? And if so, what did you think about it? We'll start off with Cab.
Yes, I didn't watch Dark Matters as it was released. I actually ended up binge watching the whole thing, I think the night before Brave New World. I really liked the format, the found footage style, and I felt it was something new, it was something fresh, but it also helped to inject a bit of life into a lot of negative expectations I'd been hearing and worrying about myself for Reborn. But the outsider perspective that Quentin offered as a brother with a sister who had powers, and then Phoebe with her worry over what these powers were, what they were doing to her, it felt very reminiscent of the first volume. It felt very Genesis, and I really got into that.
Yeah, I did watch Dark Matters. I actually got the NBC app just to watch Dark Matters, but I also liked it. I did like the perspective of it being like a home video camera. That was fresh. That was fun for Heroes. And Phoebe, yeah. I liked her in that. I liked her wonder as well as her fear mixed in, and you could tell it was both.
I totally get what you're saying with Phoebe. Like, the whole way through Heroes Reborn, I was like, when are we going to get Phoebe from Dark Matters? When are we going to get Dark Matters Phoebe? Like, she's got to turn the corner, and the whole way through, you're just like, just change back, please. Yeah.
Yeah, and that struck me as odd that she was such a dark character by the time we got her in Reborn. And it was almost disingenuous to me that somebody could have such a change.
Well, the way that I kind of resigned myself to the fact was she had done this awful, awful thing where she had murdered thousands of people, and so she was just like, I can't come back from this. So when the ending happened for her, I was like, she's just too far gone to come back, and that's why, you know, that's why I was fine with her being killed off, because it's not what she deserved, but, you know, I think it's what she would have wanted. So yeah.
Sorry, I was talking about Phoebe. Is I actually shared Quentin's view. What did they do to her? What did they do to her to push her that far?
Her love for Quentin to do that. That's my thoughts on it anyway. Quill, what did you think of Dark Matters?
At the time, I had a few issues actually getting Dark Matters, because obviously it was on the NBC website, which is region locked, or on a phone app, which
is not available in the UK.
Available in the UK. People on the site found somewhere for me to watch it, and actually, yeah, I'll agree with Mary. It was very much reminiscent of season 1, and as well, I think it was done really well, because it was short episodes. It left you hungry for more.
Let's move on to the next bit. It's a very big question, but what did you think of the season, Heroes Reborn, kind of as a whole, and kind of where does it place in your kind of all-time Heroes volume list, if you had to kind of rank them? And we'll start off with Quill.
I think the ambition was too grand with Reborn. Very different to how original Heroes was. It was entertaining, but it didn't quite feel like Heroes to me.
In an all-time list, I'm gonna say Reborn gets 4th place out of the volumes.
I agree with that. Yeah.
I really wanted to like it. I went into it wanting so bad for this to be the next season of Heroes. I wanted it to just continue. I wanted it to be a continuation of what we'd had before, but an improvement after he'd had all these years to work on it. And hearing about some of the things that they were doing with it before I got started, I thought, that sounds fascinating. This mysterious company, Noah trying to catch up to everything. And when I watched it, I really wanted to like it. But in the end, it wasn't what I wanted. It was a great story. It just wasn't what I'd hoped for out of the next season of Heroes. And that's why it doesn't get any higher on my list.
I would have to agree with Quill that it was just seeming a little bit too far-reaching. They were trying to shove so much story into so few episodes that we just didn't get the depth to the characters that I would have enjoyed seeing. I like Melina. She's this all-powerful goddess, and I could have cared less about her. She's someone who's supposed to be so centric to the plot, and yet we got so little screen time for her. There just was not enough character development, I think. There wasn't enough time for as big of a story as they were trying to tell. So I think it would probably likewise go about 3rd or 4th for me, maybe 4th in the series of volumes. But I liked it overall. It didn't give me enough depth, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Personally, what do you think could have been cut from Heroes Reborn in order to kind of make it a bit more cohesive? And we'll start off with Janie.
That's a tough one. I'm not sure I can come up with what could be cut, because I just think that there should have been more. I don't think you needed Luke's story, per se, but yet he was one of the most human on there. And so I liked his story, but I don't think it was centric to being necessary. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I like the fact that he had that kind of redemption story. I think...
honestly, Joanne was scarier than Erica.
Yeah.
So... on a more base level. She was just scarier. She was an angry person who was just out to kill people. So in some ways, she was a better villain, just a less complicated one.
And she was evil, like, pretty much the whole way through. She kind of reminded me of Samuel in the fact that she was pretty much evil the whole way through.
Yeah.
And you kind of hadn't had that in Heroes for a while because of trying to make characters morally grey. And
Right.
Quill, what would you have cut from Heroes Reborn?
Yeah, it's a very, very tough one. I think it would be, if anything had to be cut, it would be some of the characters, just so that the ones that are more centric to the plot get more screen time and more depth. Don't get me wrong, I did like the Avangador side of things and everything like that, but what did they achieve in reality? In the story arc, with what they're trying to do with the plot, did they really need to be there? I get the idea that they were trying to show that there is like how people would have reacted, there is underground, yada yada yada. That's great, but that could be shown without spending whole episodes on it, which detracts, in my opinion, it kind of detracted. It took too much attention away. With trying to do so much with the story, they also had too many characters. I think. I mean, no disrespect to anyone's performances or anything like that, because I think the Elvangador would have worked better in like another series or whatever. But yeah, there was just too much. There was too much going on to focus and to give enough depth to everything that was going on.
I also think that El Vengador, that whole storyline was kind of affected by the comic coming out. I think there might have been a bit more that had to have gone in, but they thought, well, let's kind of keep it for just the comic. But yeah, did anyone else like question the whole way through whether or not he was a special like the whole way through?
My take on that is yes, and his ability is actually ingenious design. That's how he can make a suit that made him stronger.
Yeah, that's what I thought as well, yeah.
Yeah, that's good. But talking about it, I think that you've hit it on the head. That's probably a side to the story that could have been dropped and still kept your apocalyptic villains versus heroes kind of thing. I think that would have served a much better premise for a second series, or, a second volume to Reborn, where you would follow it all the way up to Matt Parkman being turned into somewhat of a bad guy for good reasons.
Or you would have, I think it would have been something nice to kind of tease at the beginning and then have at the end kind of lead us into a would-be second season. Like,
Exactly.
the thing I really liked about it was that this is a world full of people with superpowers. We're gonna get a superhero or two, and that's what I liked about it. You know, we finally had someone with a mask who was doing something.
Yeah, I kind of missed the tights. They
Yeah,
needed capes and tights,
we
but
nearly got it. We nearly got it with, what was it, Ando and the kind of Crimson Lightning costume that.
Mhm.
But no, we didn't get it. But yeah, anyway,
It's always been our joke on the forum because need more capes and tights.
yeah, I think Cab. What would you have cut from Reborn?
Oh, wow. There were several storylines that were part of Reborn that I felt could have been trimmed down. The Quentin trying to decide what side he's on. Same thing with Nathan Tommy, who couldn't quite decide what side he was on. That we got a lot of in Villains and Fugitives, and then in Redemption with Sylar. And that was one of the things that I heard a lot of complaints about, was characters who couldn't quite decide who they were. And it's important to have character development like that. It's very important to have character development like that in an ongoing series, but to have a character who can't quite decide who they are and it lasts that long was one of the big criticisms in the Heroes Prime. And then to have it show up again in Reborn, it felt like they hadn't really learned from that mistake necessarily. I feel like the El Vengador story really didn't contribute enough. I think that looking at it as an overall, that could have been cut out and replaced with more character development for Melina, a little bit of her background, to help us better identify with her, because like Janie was saying, at the end there was really just no reason to care about her. Or maybe even, and I know this is a radical idea, but a little bit of time examining what Erica was really going for, because there was so much informing her goal and so little informing her motivation. We just had to sort of assume she's a bad guy and that's why she's doing all of this. A little bit of background on why is she like that, or maybe some opportunities to show off this is how her personality appears in normal circumstances, and this is how she is around other people, to give us a little bit of a better idea who she was. There were a lot of little storylines that could have been trimmed down like that to make room. It was just a little disappointing to see, for a show that was picking up after a 4-season show, to pick up after that and then to have so many of the same mistakes present. It was a little disappointing.
I always felt that, like, it was really weird how on the twins anyway they focused on the quote unquote Petrelli one more than the Bennett one, which, you know, that's just me. And by that, obviously, I mean Nathan Petrelli, and I'd always, for some reason, I'd always see Melina as a Bennett, just probably because, you know, blonde hair.
Blonde
It's
hair,
definitely the look.
Yeah. Did you guys twig to that pretty much early on, or were you like shocked when when the reveal happened?
I think that Janie and I had been talking about it before that reveal and trying to decide who they might belong to, and Janie was absolutely a hardcore believer that they were related to Claire, and she was actually a little upset because she thought, how am I going to work this into our RPG?
Yeah.
And my character is nothing like this Claire.
My Claire developed nothing like the Claire in Heroes Prime anyway. So she was already on her own path before, oh gosh, definitely before Redemption. But so yeah, it would have been totally uncharacteristic for her to even be in that position right now.
Does anyone find it funny, like, kind of looking back on Heroes Prime, that when Heroes Prime comes about, you've actually kind of got 3 heroes running around in the same timeline? You've got old man hero looking after Tommy, you've got present day hero who's just discovering his powers, and you've got future hero who's come back from an apocalypse, who's kind of trying to stop it from happening and stuff like that. I always found that, like, really mind-boggling when I kind of first thought about it.
I try not to think too much.
And if anyone could kind of bump into her old self, it would be Angela Petrelli, and she wouldn't think anything of it. Like, the world wouldn't end if old Angela Petrelli and young Angela Petrelli kind of met each other, because she's just so badass she can handle it.
I
agree.
This one of your previous podcasts.
Yeah.
I just recall it. I can't remember who you were speaking to, but they implied that actually, yes, she did run into herself, which I like. I love that.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
Let's talk about good things about Heroes Reborn. So we'll start off with Quill, and we'll just go with, do you have a favourite moment and also an MVP of Heroes Reborn?
MVP of Heroes Reborn would definitely be HRG, definitely be Noah. Hands down. I mean, just because he's Noah.
Yeah.
I think that says enough, really. But it's just like everything he goes from trying to catch up to making the ultimate sacrifice, and he's okay with it. I think my favourite moment is when Hero is facing down Paris in the parking lot, and it's like, you can't possibly stop us all, and he just freezes time and goes like, yes, I can.
Yeah.
I was just like, yeah, wrong thing to say to a chronokinetic.
And the development of his kind of powers at that point, when he's like jumping around from timeline to timeline, was just like what I've always been waiting for with kind of Hero. We never really kind of got that future Hero that we were kind of promised in season 1. And even though this isn't the future Hero that we kind of knew about, it's a kind of even better one. I don't know if you agree.
Yeah,
I would agree.
Cab.
I'm going to have to go with Quill on that one. The MVP of Heroes Reborn got to be HRG. All power to Jack Coleman here. He helped to really bring that view of someone who knew the story, who knew Heroes Prime, and was going into Reborn with, just as little information as we, the viewers, had. So watching him go through and discover all of this and piece this together and find out exactly what was at stake, that was an absolute necessity, I feel, for Reborn. And to have it with Jack Coleman's delivery and HRG's morally gray approach was just fantastic.
It's also very funny how someone who was a guest star in the first season of Heroes, making his way into the main cast, becomes the catalyst for Heroes Reborn happening, I think, as well.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And your favourite moment?
Oh, favourite moment? That has got to be Hero's last stand against the clones. That was very emblematic of the character, I felt.
Is that the one where he's just with the 3 clones and he just runs towards the camera?
Yeah, that one, absolutely. The idea that even a powerless hero could not stop himself from being Hero was very, very good. I felt that was an excellent finisher for his character.
Do you think he's still alive, or do you think he's dead?
I think that a version of him is still alive somewhere.
Personally, I think, well, I've talked about this on the podcast quite a bit, and it's the kind of I can't even say the word, but that Schrodinger's cat. The box is closed, and you don't know whether he's alive or dead. So for me, he's still alive. And the same kind of thing can be said about all the original characters who everyone is complaining about. Oh, they killed off all the original characters. No, well, we never saw a body for Mahinda. Well, we did see a body for Matt Parkman, but, he could just still be laying at the bottom of that lake calling out for help. But yeah, Janie, do you have a favourite moment and an MVP of Heroes Reborn?
As far as moments, I just really liked Miko. I really liked her moments of going in and out of the game.
How did you feel when you first saw that? Because when I first saw that, I was like, okay, have faith, Ricky. I was literally like, have faith. There is a reason for this, and Master Tim would not steer me wrong. But how did you feel when that first happened? Because I know a lot of people turned off because of that, and I think.
Oh, really?
Well, yeah, I think it's because, personally, in my view, it's because of the kind of culture of TV that we have, in that kind of binge watching view. If it was on Netflix, people would have kept going with it, but I think because it was week to week, people were like, well, this is ridiculous, and people forgot how Heroes stories happen. They be all off in totally different parts, as fantastical it was, and then meet like towards the end. And a lot of people forgot that, and they just wanted that instant fix. But what did you think about the kind of the computer game aspect, obviously?
I absolutely loved it. I was in awe of them bringing in what I thought at the time was a new power. Somebody that could jump into different realities, as it were.
Yeah.
A video game reality versus this reality, and just have that happen. It was awe-inspiring to me, and I'm a bit of a comic book geek too, and I play video games. So when she jumped in and she was able to do things over the top, in her fighting, just like you couldn't have done that in reality. Yeah. But throwing it into the video game, I thought that was so much fun.
She could cut people in half and behead people. At 8:00 on a Thursday night,
Exactly. And you could not have done that in reality in a Heroes universe, because that just would have been over the top, too graphic. MVP, I think we all agree that it is Noah Bennett. I think he's just been the cornerstone. He's been the rock. He's been everything that that you would look for in a foundation. He was steady. He was great. I really admire Jack Coleman. And just the character, I think it was well written. I think it was real. And I enjoyed it. The understated became kind of a focal point.
You guys have given me MVP of Heroes Reborn, but it's been of a prime character. So let's go with an MVP of the new kind of Heroes Reborn characters, the new ones, the new versions. Does anyone have one that comes immediately to mind?
Probably say Luke. As much as I said I could have cut his story and been fine, I liked him.
Is that because of Zachary Levi, or is that because of the character?
No, it was because of the character.
Fair enough.
There's no crush factor going on there. I'm sure he's a great guy and everything, but it was definitely the character. I did like you pointed out the redemption part of it, and that was good.
How did you feel about his ultimate sacrifice? Were you one of the people who were like, it happened too early, or do you think it was just right?
I think that they gave too many sacrifices there. I think I understood him going up into it as he did. I didn't think he had flight, but that was another story. Going up into the solar flare, as it were, and counteracting it and giving himself. It was almost like he was going up to meet his son in heaven.
Yeah.
I mean, there was some symbology in it. So in that way, it was nice. But I think he had a lot more story to tell. He could have still been a great character down the road.
Being kind of agree with Jamie, I think it was a bit too early, and in some respects, it cheapened Noah's sacrifice as well.
Exactly. I think there was too much sacrifice going on there.
I'm going to take a very unpopular opinion here, and I'm going to go ahead and say that the MVP of the characters, I really liked Emily Duvall. Okay, and
Scandalous.
I know.
Scandalous. No, I'm joking.
But again, just taking the approach of someone who does not have powers of their own, and building into a world of people who do, you get a lot of mixed reactions that way. But I felt like Emily taking the approach, especially the way that she did with Tommy, it was a humanizing element, especially to a character who otherwise wouldn't have really had one. Tommy's story, a lot like Melina's story, wasn't nearly as developed as it could have been for such a central character. So to give him this humanizing element and someone who believes in him in spite of everything, it was, I felt that was probably the most significant role of one of the new characters in the story.
And so you're basically saying that your MVP is a serial cheater. That's fine.
Yes. Yes. Hey, you know what? No judgment here. No judgment.
Where was Brad? But anyway, did you think that she was going to turn halfway through? For me, I was like, this girl is far too trusting of this guy. She has to be working for Erica.
Oh, I was sure that she was working for Erica. I was convinced at any moment she was going to pull a gun. But
as soon as her and Ren got together, I was like, no, she has to be good. She has to be good. This is too good, but yeah.
Yeah. You had to have an innocent element when you had so many morally gray characters.
Yeah. Like, I think her and Anne Clark were very instrumental into making Nathan who he was. You've got the mum who's like, great power comes great responsibility. Your father taught you all that kind of stuff. And you've got the girl who's just basically saying, believe in yourself. This is the world that we're in, and you can be like a beacon of hope. And I really enjoyed the fact that even though it's a guy who is taking up the main part of saving the world, because let's be honest, Melina just stood there.
Very true.
Everyone, I really wanted Melina to have more of a character.
She should have.
I found myself, when Melina was speaking, I found myself just thinking, oh, shut up.
Yeah.
She was raised by Angela Petrelli. She should have been so much more interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
So much more powerful character, just in her personality.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting that for the guy who's saving the world, it's two women who are essentially his backbone. And I think that's something that kind of may have got missed out on some of the watches. But yeah. And, you've got Mama Clark, who's essentially carrying on the great tradition of, Mama Petrelli and Mama Bennett. So yeah.
All right.
And Quill, do you have an MVP of the Heroes Reborn characters?
Not really.
That's fair enough.
Noah was like, I picked the prime character, but at the same time, I felt that Noah was leading the story. And yes, other people had stories, but no one shined quite as much as him.
Oh, well, my personal favourite, who I think, if they did do a season 2, who they would get to a kind of, not replace him, but to be that kind of Noah Bennett kind of story, is Quentin, because I really, really loved Quentin. I loved him from as soon as I saw him in Heroes Reborn Dark Matters, and I loved him the whole way through. He died, and I was like, bollocks. And then he came back, and he was a bad guy, and I was like, bollocks, but at least I've got a Quentin Frady. And his speech at the end was just everything for me. I think they could have ended it there, and it would have been just as fine.
Actually, yeah. I don't know how I forgot that, but that is, yeah, actually, thank you. You converted me.
Nice. Yes.
I will agree with you on that. Yes, that's actually ridiculous because I was thinking about that speech on the way to work this morning, and I still forget it when I ask the question.
Okay, so all of you have said your MVP of Heroes Reborn is Noah. So what did you think of that ending?
I did like it. He was content to let it happen, and I think with everything that had happened, the death of Claire after the estrangement, never quite patching it up. And yes, he had his grandkids, but he'd help them find each other, find themselves. I think it's a very natural response for the character. I think, and it suited him, and it's a good end. I'm sad that he's not going to be around if there was a season 2 for it, but I think I couldn't see another way for Noah to go other than with a great sacrifice like that, and you don't get much greater.
I would just agree.
I enjoyed it. It was a decent ending for a character who, as you said, began as really just sort of a guest star in the first season, to have gone all the way through this show and then in Reborn to make this grand heroic sacrifice and save the world. It was a tremendous journey. And just talking about that finale scene right there, I feel like it was pretty well done.
Yeah.
And Quill had a point that the previous sacrifice there, that Luke's sacrifice may have taken away from the weight of Noah's, and I can see elements of that, but I feel like because we didn't have nearly as long to get to know Luke, Noah's sacrifice had this very dramatic impact on all of the viewers and all of the fans.
I think also you've got Luke, who pretty much goes up in a blaze of glory, Human Torch style, and that's it. And then you've got like slow but quick build up to Noah making the sacrifice of, having to be the conduit and survive for maybe 2-3 minutes to say goodbye, unlike the other person who in the flashback died straight away. Like, everyone goes, oh, how comes he didn't die straight away? Because the other guy did. If anyone could handle being the conduit and survive for a bit longer, we all know it would be Noah Bennett.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question of my own, guys.
Yeah.
Who called when Noah disappeared when Melina was stopping the storm on the road? Who called that's where he was taken?
No, I didn't, but I think I did. I read or I saw like an IMDb of a young Nathan, and so I was like, oh, this could be it. This could be like young Nathan saved him, and that's who got him on the road. Like straight away, I knew it had to kind of be Nathan who was going to get him. I just didn't know.
I knew it was Nathan straight away because I was that pop.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone was like, oh, it's got to be Peter. I was like, oh, he's not coming back. People, come on.
Right.
But or Hero, and I was like, yeah, the hand was white. But yeah, I was really gearing up to being like there being two Nathans, as in like you'd have current Nathan and you'd have like baby Nathan, who was like basically doing stuff as well. But I was fine with where it went. But yeah.
By the way, I did call it.
Of course you did.
So, next up, did you guys check out any of the other kind of multi-platform storytelling for Reborn, like the comics, the ebooks, the games? Did you guys check any of that out?
I will say that after Reborn, I did not get into the ebooks, the games, anything like that. I have been trying to get my hands on the comic. I actually spent a lot of time at the library, so I have been trying to get my hands on a copy there. That's where I read all of the Prime comics from. Yeah. So I've been trying to get my hands on that, but I haven't quite gotten to it yet, no.
I honestly haven't. And I don't know if it's because Reborn didn't grab me quite as quick and easily as the first one did, as Prime did, or if it's just that my business has really taken off and I have so little time now.
I don't know if it's just me, but I find the multi-platform stuff not all that easy to come across.
Okay.
It might just be me where I live, or it might, and also the fact that I don't have much spare time. But honestly, I've only ever seen like 2 of the graphic novels, and that's because a very good friend of mine, who's also a member of the site, has them and let me borrow them. But when it comes to actually, I've never really found the stuff easy to access beyond that.
And I would probably agree with that too. Is I didn't hear anything about comics or other extra things that went along with Reborn this time.
Oh.
With the Prime, I heard a lot of things. I came across a lot of references and links on the internet and just ways to find these things where with Reborn it didn't seem as accessible.
Well, if you want to check them out, I know for sure that the ebooks are in audio form on Spotify, so you can check them out on there if you want to just listen to them. I know that one of the games, the tablet game, it was free a while ago. I don't know if that's still the case. And if you are going to check out the comics, I really do suggest finding the Farah one, because I really, really enjoy the Farah comic. But I always was a big fan of Farah. I thought she was one of the characters who kind of didn't get enough of a go round, but I've always just found her character very interesting. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Farah would have been very interesting to expand the story, but like we've said, they just didn't give the time and justice to the characters that they could have.
When I found out about the connection between Farah and Carlos, that's when I got interested in Carlos's character. It wasn't and we'll go on to the final question, which is, what would you like to see in a kind of would-be season 2? I mean, you must have your own kind of theories or at least ideas on what you would kind of want to see. Janie?
I think as we've talked about it among staff on the forum, we've really thought that exploring the twins' father, with the whole tarot cards at the end added so much mystery and so much creepiness factor to it that it actually made him a better villain in those,
closing moments,
3 minutes than it did Erica for the whole series.
Can I just ask you, what did you think about the ending of, because whenever I heard Heroes Reborn, it was going to have a definitive beginning, middle, and end. I thought it would be a self-contained story. I didn't think we'd get that kind of Marvel end credit sequence at the end.
I agree.
Were you like, oh, they're doing it to us again? Or were you like, okay, I can kind of get down with this?
I think it gave me some hope that there might be a second volume to it, that there would be another season of it coming up, that it wouldn't be canceled, was my hope.
Yeah.
That maybe they knew something I didn't, was what that did.
Are you one of the people who think Sila's the father?
No.
Okay, cool.
I never entertained that.
No problem. I don't know. Do you want me to say who the father is? I don't know if you've read spoilers or whatnot. It's no one special. But wait, no one special. It's not you.
I assumed it would be someone new.
All that they've given is the character description, a bit of the character description, and the name Hammer, as in MC. But Quill, what would you like to see in a would-be season 2?
Primarily more development of the characters, more development like Melina and Tommy. As much as I said El Vengador story could have been cut, I think
where they left it and bringing that into the next season would be awesome. Like a superhero Fantastic Four, essentially, would be great.
But other than that, I think a second season would have been the better place to do the El Vengador story. Because they could have made a season out of that, just that, and it would have been good to watch.
Yeah.
Generally, more development to the characters. Probably less characters so they can focus more on.
Well, less characters has never really been Heroes' strong suit. But I think that looking forward to a sequel, I'd like to see a little bit more of this tarot card character. He definitely caught my interest, but I'd like to see maybe a bit more of the world's reaction, I suppose, to June 13th, to the EVOs coming out the way that they did. And the events of them saving the world. I mean, there has been so much change in the Heroes universe, but we only see this tiny little peek at these characters and what it's done to them. And I'd like to see what it's done to the general people. I'd like to see news broadcasts, like what is the general attitude? What is the government doing about all of this? And seeing how the characters have actually impacted this world, because in the original Heroes series, their actions were significant, but they never really did anything that would have been world-shaking. And this Heroes Reborn introduced several elements that actually did change the world. To see that actually play out would be very, very cool.
Well, if you read or get the audiobook of Save the Cheerleader, Destroy the World, you kind of get that little 5-year gap in between, or that 4-year gap leading between, the end of Heroes and June 13th. My idea for a second season would be to do those 4 years in between, because that way we could still have Noah. We could maybe get Claire back, even though Nashville just got like renewed.
so no.
But my idea would be like that season would be about the father and meeting the father, and then we move on. So it's like kind of like a prequel to Heroes Reborn, and it would
and you could still add more depth.
Yeah.
on Melina, because hey, they're there.
Yeah, you can focus more on Melina. You could tell that side of the story from Melina's side, and I think it's a good way to kind of intro the father. And all you know is these tarot cards, and they say he's here to
Twins and Death. I think the two cards. Death as a tarot card has a very, I'm getting off topic a bit here, but has a very misguided image.
Exactly.
It doesn't actually mean death. It just means change.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. It could mean that he's there to create the twins' death, or he's there because the twins are going to create death. And we could see like he might just be that kind of misguided villain, that morally grey villain that they like. So yeah, it will basically be Heroes How I Met Your Father.
I'd be down for that.
That would definitely require Claire to come back, though.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's just got me picturing a really weird crossover scene.
Well, all that's left to do is say thank you to the guys from Heroes the RPG once again. You'll find their website for the RPG in the show notes if you want to take part. So thank you, Janie.
Thanks a lot. It's been great.
Thank you, Quill.
Thank you very much. And if anyone does want to take part, you'll be more than welcome. We're a friendly open bunch, so please come check us out.
And Cab.
Thanks for having us.
You can find Primatech Files on Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, Clamour. Just search Primatech Files, and you can find our podcast on any podcatcher service. Again, just search the word Primatech Files. Thank you for listening to the podcast. Hope you found it entertaining and informative. And until next time, keep the rebellion alive.